My name is Jonny, and I guess what makes me me ultimately is my passion, my personality, and that I essentially wear my heart on my sleeve. Sharing my lived experience in terms of mental health, I was around 23 years old, and that's the very first time that I started to experience some form of symptoms of anxiety. And I remember I was just driving home and I started getting like a really hot flushes up my neck, and it was like something that I'd never experienced before. And then from that point, like, I knew something serious was wrong, just because it just didn't feel right. And then from that moment, I started to experience moments at night where I couldn't sleep properly, heart palpitations, really irrational and illogical thoughts, and some pretty bad intrusive thoughts as well. And that started to spiral out of control over 9 months, a 9-month period. From that point, I knew something serious was going on. And after 9 months is the very first time I actually spoke to my girlfriend about it. We decided to reach out to some professionals, speak with my doctor, and they put me in touch with a counsellor. And then working with that counsellor, I was able to find techniques, use things like Cognitive Behaviour Therapy, so replacing negative thoughts with positive thoughts. And I guess the rest is history. With anxiety, because I was suffering so much with it and because I didn't know what was going on and it was bothering me so much, I was starting to experience symptoms of depression as well. So I was really struggling to get up in the morning. I wasn't wanting to exercise, and that was starting to worry me because I used to have to start work at like 7:30 in the morning, and then I was turning up at around 11 a.m. and then like leaving at 2:30. It's just because I just didn't care anymore. I don't know. I was just losing control of like myself and my life, and I was becoming a shell of the person that I was before. But at the same time, I was starting to understand that for me to evolve from this to get better, I couldn't just go back and be the person that I was, because that's what led me to that position. So I needed to get help. I needed to understand what was happening with my mind, and what kind of sickness I was dealing with. I would say the person who prompted me the most to get professional help was my girlfriend, who's my wife now. I remember her saying, look, I think you need to go see a psychologist. I remember me getting incredibly angry, like really upset, saying, you know what, if I go see a psychologist, it means I'm crazy. Like, that's it, I'm crazy. And that really, really, really scared me, because at the same time, I'm like, well, maybe it means I am crazy. And that started to freak me out even more. And I said, no, I'm not going to go see a psychologist. I'm not going to see a doctor. And then it was just getting so out of control where I couldn't fall asleep now on my own. I'd wake up in the middle of the night shaking. And I'd always have this sense of now wanting to just cry, this overwhelming feeling of just wanting to cry. And then I started to notice as well, it was really affecting my relationship with my partner. I was putting all of this, I guess, mental strain on her. I was making my problem her problem. And I understand that your partner and your friends and your family need to be there for you. But ultimately, I realized, I'm like, this is my battle, this is my problem, and I should probably take her advice on board. So I went and saw my GP, who's like, look, let's just try some breathing techniques first. It didn't work at all, just because my anxiety was, I had like an obsessive compulsive disorder. So I would even then start to obsess about my breathing. So I would be walking around the whole day thinking about how to breathe and how not to breathe. And I couldn't breathe naturally anymore. I almost felt like a robot. So I'm like, man, this is not working. And so then he's like, okay, this is a lot serious than we thought. So he hooked me up with a counsellor, and I believe I did 8 sessions. And then after I saw the counsellor and I started to learn all these different techniques and what anxiety actually is, and the counsellor said one really, really, really key important thing to me. They're like, he said, Jonny, you know that thoughts aren't real. And that's the very first time I actually thought about it in an objective way. I'm like, they're not real. They're just things that are in my mind. The biggest challenges of my personal journey with mental health was I didn't even really know what was happening to me. I didn't understand it. Like, honestly, it felt like I had a curse. Like, that's how illogical I was thinking. But just being a 23-year-old, I guess, ignorant male, you kind of feel like Superman. And so when something like this starts to happen to you, you just don't know what's going on, and you're just too scared to ask for help. And I felt embarrassed because I thought, what's this going to disclose about me? Because I thought I was a confident young man, and I thought I had this mental strength that no one else had, but I obviously didn't. So the challenges was that I felt that my anxiety and my partial depression, it actually exposed me. And that was really, really difficult to deal with. And so the biggest thing was not knowing what was wrong with me, exposing really what mental state that I was at, which meant essentially I was just really fragile. That was really scary. That was really confronting. It's like, you're not mentally strong and you're actually quite fragile. And that's very confronting when you think you're the opposite. So that was one of the hardest things for me to deal with. And also just to get the courage to actually go to an absolute stranger, like a doctor, and be like, hey, I have these really, really bad thoughts in my head. Like, that's very difficult to just go to a stranger and say that. I knew that I had no other choice. It was getting really, really bad. The successes of me dealing with my mental health battle is I was able to really discover now who I was. I was able to evolve into the person that I actually thought I was. And just because it was getting so bad, it was getting so out of control, where I'd say, if someone was to say to me, hey, I'll cut your arm off or I'll cut your legs off, but this pain will go away, I would have said yes. And so to reflect back on that and go, my God, like, look at the state that I allowed like myself to get into and to where I was now, like to what I was evolving, I was really proud of that. I was like really happy about that and about how I could actually change those things about me, because I honestly didn't think at one point, I think there was one point where I thought, I'm never going to get past this. There is no chance I can get past this because I can't switch my mind off. It was just so out of control. It was just so illogical. Just no matter what, I tried to do everything on my own, and that was an issue. And so learning that, having the support around you, an actual network of people that you can talk to, it really opened my eyes. I really started to gain an understanding of what is anxiety, what is depression, what is actually wrong with me. And that's a big success for me. And understanding that there can be chemical imbalances, there could be some form of trauma and then something bringing it back up and reminding you about it and just setting you off. There are so many things that I learned through this journey about myself and about the mind, and how the mind or the brain, whatever way you want to look at it, how it's just a muscle and it needs to be trained. You need to like take care of yourself. That for me was major. It was a massive turning point. What I do personally for my own self-care and well-being, I exercise daily. I'm incredibly careful with what I put into my body, and I meditate every day. They're things that I learned along the way. The meditation is a big thing. I would listen to videos on how essentially your mind is like an ocean, and when it's feeling depressed or anxious, it's like you're going through this massive storm. On the surface, it's just absolute chaos. It's pretty violent. But if you were to dive down deep enough, you would find this absolute calmness. And that's what meditation does. When I'd be feeling really anxious and thinking about all these horrible things, I'm like, man, I need to sit down. You need to breathe. You just need to focus. You need to train your mind. You need to train your mind. You need to train your mind. I would start to meditate. And sometimes I couldn't even do it for 20 seconds straight. But then I'd be like, oh man, I did that for 1 minute. Oh, I did that for 2 minutes. Oh, I did that for 5 minutes. And what I started to understand was that meditation was not allowing me to stop my thoughts, but it was allowing me to be able to not allow the thoughts to affect me, just like a bully. So I was like, well, okay, cool. Like, so if I do have a bad thought, so what? It's just a thought. Just leave it. Just move on. Just grow from it. Big deal. Don't give it any power. So meditation for me on a daily basis is a major thing. The other thing that I do as well is I am much more in the moment in my life. So I try to, whatever I'm doing, I try to really give everything to that. And I guess that's why I'm pretty passionate with no matter what I do. So if I'm spending time with my family, I really just want to be with my family. If I'm training with a client, I really try my hardest to put everything I can into that moment and be appreciative of everything we have, just because I feel like I lost so much time with my anxiety, my depression, and I feel like I have so much more to gain now. So with my meditation and just eating right and training hard and just living in the moment, that's what I do for self-care. What do the words mental illness mean to me? I think about anxiety. I think about depression. I think about people who commit suicide. To me, it's not so well defined, but it's just like if someone was to say to you, what do you think about when you hear the word cancer? You think about breast cancer, you think about chemotherapy, you think about radiation. I do the same thing with mental illness. I think about all the different types of all the different types of illnesses that people suffer with. So before, when I was younger, I would have thought, it just means when you're crazy. Just like a really stupid answer. Just like a really like ignorant response. But now when I think about mental illness, I think about all the different things that are wrong with someone's brain chemically, and potentially sometimes I think about what's wrong with people spiritually. Mental well-being, to me, the first thing that I think of immediately, just naturally now, is meditation. I just think it's just such a great way to take care of yourself. I think about exercise. I think about good nutrition. I think about people needing to be selfish so that they can improve themselves, so that they can give more to their family and to their community. I just think about people being kind to themselves. I just don't think we are nice to each other, individually, to ourselves. So mental well-being is about you being able to take care of yourself. I think the biggest thing that can be changed is just the way that the message is delivered on what mental health is and what people need to do. When I used to watch, like, say, ads on what depression is or anxiety is, and they're like, anxiety is this voice, it's this, it's that. I'm like, to me, it's not that at all. So I couldn't make that connection. And then when someone would try to explain what depression is, I'm like, I'm not experiencing that at all. I have some symptoms, but so that connection I find is sometimes missing. Potentially how the message is delivered, but something major. The first thing is the success rate. That's not promoted nowhere near enough. I remember reading all the Beyond Blue information guides, and all the way at the bottom, it was like the last thing. A large percentage of people who complete 12 psychology sessions find an immense relief in symptoms. It was something like that. And I'm like, man, that's the most important thing. I'm like, you knowing that people can get past this is a huge comfort, because you can have loved ones hugging you and saying it's going to be okay. Don't worry, you'll be fine. But they don't know that. You don't know that. But then if you see the data, you're like, oh, wow, if I go see a psychologist, if I go talk to someone and they're professionals, they can help me with this, I will get better. The advice that I would give them is that unless you are willing to get help, you're not going to get better. So if you really want to get past this, like you truly mean that, then you have to go speak to someone. This is your problem. You have to take ownership of it. It's just like anything. If you want to lose weight, you need to be responsible for what you put in your mouth. If you want to get past your mental health, if you want to improve, you have to take ownership of your problem. Do I want to be a success story? Do I want to get past this? Do I want to be able to pass this information to my loved ones, to my friends, to my children? So my advice is be kind to yourself. Go to your doctor. There's millions of GPs out there. Go talk to one of them and go, I need some help. I truly need some help. And then when you go and you have mental health plans that are available, go see a psychologist. Talk to them. But at the same time, own the problem. Just confront it front on. It's yours to fix, no one else's. And that's a good thing, because I can promise you the life lessons that you'll gain from that, it's going to transform everything around you. And I just find sometimes in mental health, we don't take responsibility for what's happening. And it's 100% something that you need to. And then if you do that and you can get past it with the right amount of help, you'll be thankful for it.